Mr. Mesereau.
Yes. Thank you, Your Honor. Ladies and gentlemen, when I began my opening statement, I told you that I was going to begin by concentrating on who these people are and what they have done. And I'd like to continue that little journey for the time being. We left off when I told you we would prove that in late 2000, there was a fundraiser at the Laugh Factory, which is a comedy club in Los Angeles owned by Jamie Masada. On December 22, the year 2000, the Arvizos successfully hustled $2,000 out of actor Chris Tucker.
I'm going to object to the term, hustled. It's argumentative.
Sustained.
December 22, 2000, the Arvizos obtained $2,000 from actor and comedian Chris Tucker, claiming they were destitute and needed the money for medical bills. I think you know who actor Chris Tucker is. He was in Rush Hour 1 and Rush Hour 2, the movies. On October 1, 2001, Janet Arvizo reported her husband to the police claiming assault, terrorist threats, etc. She told the police in Los Angeles that Michael Jackson, Kobe Bryant and Fritz Coleman will help her in her suit against her ex-husband. Kobe Bryant doesn't know who she is. On the same day that she made that statement to the police and they put it in a report, the Arvizos convinced police in Los Angeles that they were destitute and had nothing. On October 4, 2001, Janet Arvizo brought a video and photos of celebrities she knew to show the police. The police then tried to raise money for she and her family. And they did. On October 31, 2001, Chris Tucker took them to Knott's Berry Farm. They had asked him for help because of Gavin and their being destitute. On that same day, Janet Arvizo went on disability so she could receive $104 per week, didn't disclose the money she'd raised, didn't disclose the J.C. Penney settlement. And as I said before, she never disclosed the disability that she was receiving to the welfare authorities who were paying her as well. That's the 31st, 2001. She starts getting $104 a week, and almost 10 days later, November 9, 2001, she buys a new car for $23,000. A week after she buys the car for $23,000, she applies for welfare and food stamps. She reports no assets. She omits her disability income. She never mentioned her Washington Mutual bank account, her City National Bank account or the $152,000 J.C. Penney settlement, and those applications are under penalty of perjury. We'll call this the second act of perjury. On November 20, 2001, 5 days after she applied for welfare and food stamps, she filed her arrest report on her husband with LA Welfare to help her get expedited public assistance. And in December of that year, the LAPD, the Los Angeles Police Department, had a drive to get Christmas presents for the Arvizos because they were destitute and can't pay their medical bills. In January of 2002, Michael Jackson continued to give gifts to the Arvizos, all kinds of gifts. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, on January 12, Janet receives a welfare check. On January 31, she receives a welfare check. December 8, she gets a welfare check. March 20, she gets a welfare check. April 6, she gets a welfare check. In October of 2002, she reapplies for welfare, falsely claimed she has not received any assistance in the prior 3 years and has no assets. This is the person making these claims against Michael Jackson. On December 2, of that year, the Arvizos moved into a new home on St. Andrew's Place in Los Angeles with Mrs. Arvizo's fiancé, who she has since married. His name is Jay Jackson. He is in the Army. He has paid her rent, she has not disclosed the rent, and she was taking her welfare checks and depositing them into his account to hide them. On December 22, moving along that year, she signed an income and expense statement under penalty of perjury in her divorce action, and she omitted any assistance her boyfriend, fiancé, was giving her from that declaration, which was under penalty of perjury. On January 3, moving along, her boyfriend paid her back rent at the Soto Street address, which is the studio apartment I described to you before where she brought people to show them how poor they were living. She kept it for that purpose. The family wasn't living there at all. On January 10, 2003, she signed a welfare eligibility report under penalty of perjury. She falsely claimed she had not received cash or other benefits, and as I've just told you, we will prove she most certainly had. It goes on and on. I am going to go through the events of what happened at Neverland and elsewhere so I can prove to you in this trial there was never any molestation or any crime of any kind committed by Michael Jackson. But before I do that, I think it might be wise to tell you a little bit about the purchases she made, care of Michael Jackson, while she claimed she was falsely imprisoned at luxury hotels in Neverland. Now, Keep in mind Ms. Arvizo and her children are claiming that they were falsely imprisoned, that Mr. Jackson masterminded a conspiracy to falsely imprison the entire family at Neverland, where he lives and where he has approximately 40 or 50 employees, many of them ex-police officers, others licensed in daycare and things of that sort. She says she was falsely imprisoned on a flight to Florida with Chris Tucker, not with Michael Jackson. She says she was falsely imprisoned at the Turnberry Resort in Florida, a luxury hotel where Michael Jackson was staying. She says she was falsely imprisoned at the Calabasas Inn, a very nice hotel in Calabasas, and she says that she was falsely imprisoned 3 times at Neverland and went back every time. She has said that under penalty of perjury. Let's go through what she was buying and what was ultimately billed to Michael Jackson during this terrible period of false imprisonment. February 14, 2003. Full leg wax at Bare Skin Salon for $50. A lip wax. A bikini wax. Has her face done at Aromatherapy Day Spa. The total is $140. February 21. Lisa's Beauty. Hair products for Janet Arvizo are purchased for $28.91. The same day, she buys bras and jockey bikinis at Robinson May, a total of $92.24, all billed to Michael. On February 25 at Anchor Blue, she buys clothing for $448.04 for she and her children. She also goes to Robinson's May, buys bras, thongs and bikinis for $115.83 in care of Michael Jackson. She buys cosmetics at Lisa's Beauty for $34.29. On February 26, during this period of alleged false imprisonment, she buys clothing at Pacific Sunwear for $26.80. She buys socks, bras, and underwear at the Jockey Store for $454.64. At Banana Republic, she buys shirts and boxers for a total of $416.18. She spends $64.32 on clothing at Gap. She spends $436.77 at the Levi's outlet, same day, during this period of alleged false imprisonment. She spends $74.69 at Abercrombie & Fitch, $88.06 at Robinson's May for junior clothes, $160.58 at Robinson's May, again for bras and shorts, and she goes to Foot Locker and spends $91.44 for shoes for her son Star. The next day, February 27th, another day of alleged false imprisonment by this grand conspirator called Michael Jackson, Robinson's May Cosmetics, Daywear Treatment, $129.36. Cosmetics, facial soap and lotion for Janet, $30.85. Slippers, $28.12. Spends over $63, care of Michael Jackson. She goes to Rite Aid during this period of false imprisonment. She buys a mechanical pencil, body spray, feminine hygiene products, chapstick and gum for $62.09. She goes to Anchor Blue and spends $92.01. Gavin gets a haircut the next day at Song's Barbershop for $20. She gets a manicure and a pedicure for $51. March 3rd, Anchor Blue, more clothing for Janet, $29.23. Then we go to Robinson's May, cosmetics for Janet, $71.86. And finally on March 10th, Lovely Nails, a manicure and pedicure for Janet Arvizo, $115. The total of what I just read to you is $3,312.05 for Janet Arvizo while she's falsely imprisoned at luxury hotels in Neverland. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to address the issue of the Bashir documentary, which the prosecutor has dramatically suggested to you led to incredibly bizarre criminal and frantic behavior by Michael Jackson and others. Before I do that, however, I'd like to put this in perspective a little bit. You heard the prosecutor tell you that when the Bashir documentary aired, there was panic, a frantic reaction. The media was everywhere, and they were. The Department of Children and Family Services in Los Angeles was investigating what happened. I will represent to you that we'll prove the district attorney's office in Santa Barbara was investigating what went on, and Michael Jackson knew about it. It all starts really getting going in January and February 2003. You have, from all sides, the following. Media everywhere. The DA's office looking into what all this means. The Department of Children and Family Services looking at what all this means. The people around Michael Jackson allegedly panicked and concerned. And there was concern, but I'll tell you what it was all about. The networks start negotiating to have a responsive show to the Bashir documentary, which ultimately happens. So they're converging on Neverland. They're converging on Michael's people and his advisors and himself to try and do something to respond to the Bashir documentary. And guess what happens, they say, in the middle of all of this? That's when they say the child molestation begins. I submit to you we will prove it never, ever happened. Can you imagine a more absurd time for it to ever happen? Because what the prosecutor said to you about the media was true. They were everywhere. They were following the Arvizos to their home. They were trying to get interviews. And the Arvizos were asking for money from the media, just like they wanted money to do a production with Michael Jackson. We will bring in witnesses who will tell you Janet Arvizo wanted distribution rights. She was on the phone with attorneys trying to get distribution rights. Her fiancé wanted millions of dollars. He said, a house, a son's education, none of this is enough. We want a piece of this action. And when they weren't going to get it, the molestation allegations started to form, just like the pattern I outlined to you before at JCPenney and with the ex-husband David. They don't start right away. They end up developing over a period of time, just when they think they're not going to live at Neverland forever. Michael's not going to be a father, as she always referred to him everywhere, just as they realized they're probably not going to get rich off a production involving Michael Jackson, just as they realized documents were not going to be executed because Gavin had been in the Bashir documentary that would give them some piece of the net or gross profits. Just as they realize all of this free ride, this party was ending, did they go to the police with the molestation allegation? Number they went to a lawyer. And then they went to another lawyer, never to the police, until they had worked out all their legal rights and opportunities. And I will get into that a little more deeply in my opening statement. And by the way, we will prove to you that down the line, when Janet Arvizo realized it didn't look too good, if there really was a molestation that went on, that you would go to a lawyer and not the police. Guess what she started to say? I learned it from the police. This was after her lawyer went to the police to report the alleged molestation. We will prove this to you. Let me tell you how the Bashir documentary happened. It didn't happen exactly as the prosecutor told you. A journalist, British journalist, named Bashir, Martin Bashir, wanted to do a documentary on Michael Jackson. He wanted it to be scandalous, and he wanted to get rich. And that's what he did. But he knew that getting close to Michael Jackson may not be easy. After all, so many people around the world want to get near him. They want opportunities they believe he carries with him. This has been an ongoing issue with Michael Jackson his whole life. Because he's a musical genius, because he's so well known, because he's perceived as being so successful, people are always buzzing around him trying to get a hook into his business, trying to just grab something that will give them fame and fortune. It's an ongoing reality. It's an ongoing problem. And as Michael Jackson has said many times, I am very lonely because of it. He has written that in his autobiography, and he has said it. Everybody wants a piece of me. Martin Bashir was no exception, just like the Arvizos were no exception. So Martin Bashir decided the best way to get to Michael Jackson is a form of flattery. I will misrepresent to him my true intentions, and I will find that little point of vulnerability that will get him to me so I can work with him and get this project that's going to make me wealthy. Bashir had interviewed Princess Diana of England sometime previously. He knew Michael Jackson was a great fan and friend of Princess Diana. To any of you who know anything about Princess Diana, you can understand why. She had the opportunity to simply live in wealth, pomposity, a rigidity in the social structure in England, and she didn't want it, she wasn't happy with it, and she branched out on her own and offended people. And she went to Africa and she worked with children with AIDS, and she made a crusade out of trying to stop landmines around the world which explode and hurt children, mines for civil war. And she decided she was going to live her life the way she chose. She and Mr. Jackson had a friendship and a camaraderie, because he saw that he had pursued a similar life. Bashir concluded that, I'll get to him through his love and affection for Princess Diana. Bashir knew that a psychic in England named Uri Geller, who's been on TV doing things, he thought Uri Geller could get to Michael Jackson. And it turns out he could. He called up Uri Geller and he was gushing with flattery. He said he admired what Michael had done for children around the world. He specifically referred to Michael's visits to sick children in hospitals around the world. He said, I so admire this. We need to promote it better. We need to do a documentary that will show the world what kind of a person Michael is, and we will focus on children. And he had some specific ideas. He told Uri Geller that Michael Jackson has always wanted an International Children's Day, much like Mother's Day or Father's Day. And he told Uri Geller that he wanted to bring Michael Jackson to meet Kofi Annan, the Secretary General of the United Nations, and he was hoping by doing so, that Michael would visit Africa and help children with AIDS. He told Uri Geller, "I can accomplish that," and Geller was very interested. Geller arranged a meeting between Michael Jackson and Martin Bashir in London. And Bashir gave the same routine that I just described. "You were misunderstood. What you've done is so phenomenal. The world needs to know. I'm the one best positioned to do this project, so the world really will understand who you are and what you've accomplished." And he showed him a letter, somewhat crumbled up letter, from Princess Diana commending him for the way he had conducted her interview. Everything was sugar and spice and everything nice. Unfortunately, it was false. It was deception par excellence. The meeting was arranged. Michael met with Mr. Bashir. He agreed to do the documentary because he believed what I just told you. Michael had some conditions. He didn't want his children's faces to appear on the documentary. Michael loves his children. They're beautiful little kids. They live with him at Neverland, and they were living there throughout these alleged events, these so-called crimes that didn't happen. But nevertheless, Bashir wanted to follow him around, and he did follow him to various cities, Berlin, etc. Michael was terrified that his children's faces would be on that documentary. He is perpetually terrified that something will happen to his children. They'll be kidnapped. There will be extortion. There will be a ransom request. They'll be injured, or worse. Bashir agreed. Their faces will never appear. They will not be recognizable on that documentary. And that was false. Michael asked him if he could see the footage before it was broadcast, because Michael has been in this business his whole life. He has seen what the media can do to anybody. They can take footage and remove it. They can take footage and connect it. They can take words and replace them. They can do whatever they want and make you look terrible if they want, and it had been done to him often throughout his career. He didn't want that to happen in this documentary. Martin Bashir assured him he would have full editorial control, and that was a falsehood. Michael wanted any money he received to go to charity. Bashir assured him it would. Uri Geller also wanted money to go to charity, but he also wanted a personal service fee. He wanted a percentage of the net proceeds, and he worked that out with Bashir, not with Michael. Let me give you a flavor for what Bashir said to Michael Jackson to induce him to do this project. On July 23, 2002, he sent a letter to Michael's assistant. He had a plan of action for filming at Neverland. He said on July 29, they wanted to feature Michael with a large group of children, around 50, welcoming them and sharing with them his extraordinary home so that, for one day, their lives can be enriched seeing Michael with the children on the rides and then taking them into his movie theater to watch a film. The next day, Tuesday, July 30th, I was hoping that Mac Culkin will be available to visit. He is an extremely close friend of Michael's and has provided support throughout the years. That's Macaulay Culkin, the actor. Wednesday, July 31st. This would be a day spent working with Michael, the musical genius, listening to the song he has written for the International Children's Holiday, and also viewing some tapes from his extraordinary career, reflecting upon 30 years of success. Thursday, August 1st. A walk around Neverland, the zoo and all the other attractions that have been built both for Michael and the benefit of others. The beautiful landscape encouraging all of us to become, as little children again, quote, unquote. Friday, August 2nd, late night drive through LA. How Michael still connects with the inner city, and how he has drawn inspiration for his dance scenes from the Ghetto Kids. I shall give you a call tomorrow to check through this, but hope that it will be possible. Obviously, the trip to Africa, plus the UN visit are in the early stages of planning, but I shall certainly give you full details as soon as matters are confirmed. You will learn, ladies and gentlemen, what Bashir said to Michael face to face, as he did this project, a project designed to humiliate, degrade and deceive. He said to him at one point with respect to Michael and children, I saw yesterday, just to explain, a very special interaction between you, and it was a privilege to see it. I've got 3 children, and to be honest, it was a bit of an education to watch, referring to Michael and children. He said to Michael, you know, nobody ever asks you these questions about how you approach children, how you love children, what you do for children, and how you raise your own. He said, nobody ever asks Michael any of these questions. They all ask these ignorant things, and he called those people scum. He told Michael, Neverland is an extraordinary, a breathtaking, a stupendous, an exhilarating, an amazing place. I can't put together words to describe Neverland, flattering Michael, trying to lead him to his destruction. He said, one of the things that puzzles me, that I find difficult to understand, is why an artist like yourself, who has brought such beautiful music to the world, who has written the melody of most of our lives. My life, my romantic development was partially shaped by your records. Why I find it so difficult to understand is why is it that, having brought this to the world, people are quick to criticize. He said being with Michael and children was like a beautiful journey. He said to Michael Jackson, one of the things I noticed about you over the last year is your relationship with your children. Your relationship with and I have to say to you that I didn't know you before, but your relationship with your children is spectacular. It almost makes me weep when I see you with them, because your interaction is so natural, loving, so caring, and everyone who comes in contact with you knows that. As the prosecutor has told you, he will show you that documentary. Keep in mind, if you will, what I just told you when you see it. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Bashir traveled with Michael through Europe and the United States, spent time at Neverland. Took about 8 months to put it together. And on that documentary, Michael Jackson makes very clear, I don't do anything sexual with children. I don't commit crimes. Gavin Arvizo is on that documentary. But ladies and gentlemen, Janet wanted her children in films. She always said that. We have witnesses who will confirm that, and the children all went to acting schools. They wanted to be actors. In fact, while they were visiting Neverland, Michael tried to assist them. He let Star do his own video, called it The Neverland Channel. They were trying to get him to help them break in. And he did help them. She knew exactly what was happening when her children went to Neverland and when Gavin was in that documentary. But she had one problem. She wanted money, and she didn't see it coming. We will prove to you, throughout this trial, that her reaction to this film was primarily, how do I profit? How do I get distribution rights? What documents should I sign? How do I negotiate the documents? In fact, one witness will tell you that before the family filmed what has been called the rebuttal show that the prosecutor talked to you about, she not only appeared happy as can be about filming it, but she delayed it because she was on the phone with a lawyer trying to figure out what her rights were. And when presented with what is called a model document to deal with distribution rights, she complained, didn't want to sign it, wanted to get advice. Her main complaint was she didn't profit from the Bashir documentary that became world famous. She did have media following her around. There is no question about that. They did follow her to her house. They followed her everywhere. There also is no question that we will prove she wanted security with her because she said the media were hounding them so badly. And this stuff about security from Michael Jackson somehow being there to imprison her we will prove is false. She wanted security. She didn't want the media just hounding them, but she did want money from the media. That we will prove also. Her fiancé, now her husband, has testified that they didn't want money, but we have a witness who will tell you that he approached them at their home, and Jay Jackson wanted $15,000 for a photo and article. We will also prove to you that he made the statement, Michael Jackson can give us a house. Michael Jackson can pay for college. Michael Jackson can pay for benefits. That's not enough. We want big money. Davlin told a friend of Michael Jackson, we're getting a home in the Hollywood Hills. The statements designed to get something of a financial benefit are endless, and we will prove them in this trial. July of 2000 was the first contact between Gavin Arvizo and Michael Jackson, as I said before. And in August, the Arvizos visited Neverland for the first time. They then came with their father David, they stayed a number of nights, and in October Michael gave them an SUV. In June, in the year 2001, there was very little contact. Now, I've told you about some of the financial stuff that was going on during the year 2001. But Michael Jackson didn't really see these people in the year 2001. They surfaced again in 2002, but I have already explained to you all the efforts to latch on to other celebrities that they tried, and it didn't completely work. Michael Jackson, as I said before, did everything he could to help this family overcome cancer, and they repeatedly commended him for doing so. They repeatedly make public statements that Michael had helped save Gavin's life. That the friendship, the warmth, the encouragement, what went on at Neverland helped save him from cancer. I will read from transcripts to you words to that effect. The accolades were endless until they realized he wasn't going to support them forever, and that's when everything changed and this nightmare of false allegations started. Bashir arrived at Neverland and he did film Michael Jackson and he filmed Gavin, and he took statements from both. Nobody expected any of this to be secret or quiet. Everyone knew it was for worldwide distribution. What Michael said on that documentary he expected to be publicized throughout the world. It wasn't meant to be a private thing. It was meant to be a public thing, and that needs to be understood as you watch it and hear his words. And I repeat, he repeatedly says, nothing sexual happens with me and children, ever. He does display some idealism on the film. He talks about children coming to school with guns and why they need love, why they need caring, that there's got to be a way to change this. He talks about children who need attention and affection, and something must be wrong with all the violence in the world. Yes, that's Michael Jackson's idealism, some might say, to some extent, naivete. Certainly naivete when it comes to making yourself vulnerable to false claims. At this point, I would like to go through some of what was said in Bashir. Much of what was said did not appear on Bashir. Fortunately, Mr. Jackson had his own videographer filming while Bashir filmed, and as you can imagine, and this is not unusual with 8 months of work, it had to be condensed down into a show. Much of what Michael said about his view of the world, his view of the need for peace and love, his desire to see more creativity in the world and his great belief in children as a cause was left out, and in its place what you will see is commentary by Bashir designed to create a scandal, and he did. In September of 2002, ladies and gentlemen, the Arvizo family made numerous visits to Neverland, one of them with actor Chris Tucker. As Gavin says on the Bashir documentary, on one occasion he slept on Michael's bed and Michael slept on the floor. Nowhere in that documentary does he say, I had sex with Michael Jackson. In fact, months afterward, he was saying in various recorded statements, he saved my family. He saved me from cancer. He's never done anything wrong. Now Janet's spin was, that was because we were falsely imprisoned. I'm going to go through those statements also. Incidentally, the prosecutor talked about a videotaped interview with the family, and he used the word, scripted. He used the word, scripted, to suggest that everything you're going to see, because if they don't play it, we will, was somehow memorized, forced, false and fabricated. Not only is that not true, I invite you to watch it. Watch their facial expressions. Watch their demeanor. Watch the spontaneous answers. Watch how long those answers go on for, and watch the point where Janet doesn't think she's on tape. And when you see that stuff, you ask yourself, is this all memorized, or is something wrong here? Yes, it was a show designed to show the good side of Michael Jackson, to commend him, as Bashir told him he was going to be commended. And, yes, it was designed to show what he had done for Gavin. And, yes, before it, there was a sheet of questions, and everybody pretty much knew, kind of, what was going to be asked. But the responses, just watch them. Davelin cries as she praises Michael Jackson of what he did for her brother. Janet goes on and on, calling him a surrogate father, the father to her children, says they had no father, and then goes into a long tirade of what victims they have been throughout their lifetime, that you really need to see. She says, we were spat on because of our race. Nobody would help us. We ate cereal together. Department of Children and Family Services in Los Angeles did nothing for us. And you'll see the anger and you'll see the, I'm a victim, type of mentality throughout. She says, we were destitute, had nowhere to turn, and Michael Jackson rescued us. Look at the film, and see if it's memorized. And look at the part where she doesn't know she's on film. The reality is, ladies and gentlemen, she did her own makeup. She had a little curl over the top of her head so she'd look like Michael's well-known sister, Janet Jackson. She wanted to be on film. Christian Robinson will tell you that she was happy as a lark before it, was eager to do it, was on the phone with someone he thought was a lawyer talking about how much money she could make from it. The notion that this family was falsely imprisoned with some gun to their head and forced to make all those statements is absolutely false. Gavin Arvizo, as you know, appeared in the Bashir film. It aired in the United Kingdom, England, in February, on February 3, 2003. The next day, the media were in a frenzy. As I said before, they began to track down the Arvizo family to follow them around. They were actually camped in front of their home. That was the day Jay Jackson, her boyfriend, demanded $15,000 for a tabloid interview. He has since denied under oath that he did that. We will prove that he did. 2 days later, on February 6, 2003, the Bashir program aired in the United States, and prosecutor Sneddon began an investigation. And Mr. Jackson knew that. Of course, the allegations now are a few weeks after the media frenzy, and the DA investigation, and the DCFS investigation, and Michael suddenly starts molesting Gavin. By the way, we're going to prove something else. Initially, when the prosecutors charged Mr. Jackson, they said the molestation began in early February. Later on, they learned that during a DCFS interview, Department of Children and Family Services. The family had all said Mr. Jackson did nothing but help them. Never hurt them. Never did anything wrong. They later learned that on that video which the prosecutor referred to where he says they had essentially a gun to their head, or words to that effect, and they also praised Mike Jackson and said nothing bad was done, ever, and guess what? That complaint went by the wayside. An indictment was returned that changed the dates of the alleged molestation to begin after those statements. And that's a fact. And incidentally, we will prove to you that after learning how important those statements could be, where you're recorded twice, actually more than twice, you're recorded over 3 times saying Michael never did a thing wrong, never molested, never touched, never did anything like that. Gavin changed his story as well. Suddenly it all started later on after the statements made to the Department of Children and Family Services. How are we doing time-wise, Your Honor?
5 more minutes.
Okay, it's important, ladies and gentlemen, that I talk about these dates, because the progression of what develops and who gets involved, and the amount of activity going on everywhere is critical to understanding how utterly absurd these dates of child molestation are. And I ask you to consider that as you look at the evidence in this case. As I said before, the Bashir program aired in the United States on February 6, 2003. The same day prosecutor Sneddon announced he was going to investigate, because people were talking about the way Bashir handled this issue of boys allegedly being in the bed. As I said before, Michael said he slept on the floor one time. It wasn't at all the way Bashir was trying to make it look. The next, 2 days later, February 8, 2003, Ed Bradley of the TV show 60 Minutes arrived with a film crew to Neverland. Also present were Jack Sussman, the president of CBS Entertainment, and attorneys David LeGrand and Mark Garrigus. Various networks were trying to compete for the right to do the rebuttal show, the show that was supposed to be a response to Bashir's scandal show. And there was a lot of activity going on at Neverland and among people associated with Mr. Jackson because, yes, there was great dislike for what Bashir had done and the way he tried to hurt Michael's reputation. But there also were, to a lot of people around Michael, a great business opportunity, because they saw the opportunity to make millions of dollars in a production that never could have happened if Bashir hadn't aired. It was called by everybody a rebuttal piece. So, yes, there was concern, and, yes, there was elation by certain people around Michael because they thought they could make money. And networks were approaching Michael and people around him to try and benefit from that opportunity. And ladies and gentlemen, millions were made by certain people on the rebuttal film. On February 16, 2003, Janet Arvizo and her family were taped by investigator Brad Miller saying, "Michael's wonderful. He never did anything improper." Now, that's supposed to be part of this, I guess, false imprisonment thing. That apparently they're being forced to do that. They're living at Jay Jackson's apartment. Jay Jackson is in the United States Army. Excuse me. Nobody calls the police, calls the United States Army, complains that we're falsely imprisoned. They're forcing us to make statements. They're forcing us to testify. They're forcing us to say certain things complimentary to Michael Jackson. Nobody does because there was no reason to. And the security people were requested by Janet because of all the media frenzy. This may be a good place to end, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right, we'll take our afternoon recess. We'll reconvene tomorrow morning at the same time. Remember my admonitions. Don't discuss the case. Don't form any opinions or conclusions. See you tomorrow morning.